When I was going to Bible college, my professors were wont to say things like, God's 10 plagues against Egypt were attacks against the Egyptian gods. Did not Yahweh say to Moses in Exodus 12:12, on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. Now, just as 3 meant few, 40 meant many, and 7 was a sacred counting, so also 10 plagues matched the 10 fingers on the human hand, and it represented a type of fullness. Here, a fullness of the judgment of God against Egypt and her gods. Now, in class, whenever I would ask, what exactly, or whenever when, however, in class, I would raise my hand and ask for specifics. What Egyptian gods were involved and how exactly did each plague diminish them? I never got more than 1 or 2. They'd throw but one back at me like, well, the Nile, Hapi, blacking out the sun, Ra, kind of obvious ones. And then after that, they'd usually mumble off 1 or 2 others that I couldn't really hear. And then, change the subject. Like, any other questions before we move on? And I'm not making fun of them. My professors in seminary were amazing. But on this particular point, it was a little bit of a frustration for me. I could never really get a lot of specific details. So at some point, I was like, man, I really gotta look this up. I really gotta find out what's going on here. So that you don't have to suffer the same unmet curiosity, let me give you a list. You'll have to forgive my Egyptian. I'm not a native speaker. So when Pharaoh boasts, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? Did I sound like Yul Brynner? I was going for Yul Brynner. Yahweh shows Pharaoh exactly who he is. Yahweh is the Lord of Lords. So let's go back to our obvious one. The Nile turned into blood. Hapi was the god of the yearly flooding of the Nile, which is the very source of Egypt's life. Pharaoh made the Hebrews cast their sons to the Nile, and when it was struck with Moses' staff, it ran red like the blood of those drowned there, and devoured by fish and crocodiles. Hapi was often called Lord of Fish and Birds and Marshes, as well as Lord of the River, bringing vegetation. Everything in the Nile died. Second, the frogs swarm the land. Hecate is a fertility goddess with the head of a frog. Rather than rising with the Nile, the frogs exit from the Nile, swarm the land, and fill Egypt with putrefaction. Though Hecate was also she who hastens birth, it is the Hebrew women worshiping Yahweh alone who are... Though Hecate also... Frogs swarm the land. Now, Hecate was a fertility goddess with the head of a frog, and the frog was a fertility symbol, and Yahweh certainly blesses them with fertility. But rather than rising with the Nile, they exit the Nile, swarm the land, and fill Egypt with putrefaction. Now, Hecate was also she who hastens birth, but it is the Hebrew women who are worshiping Yahweh alone, who are, quote unquote, not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them. Third, we have lice from the dust. Geb or Geb, again, I'm not a native Egyptian, I don't know how all these are supposed to be pronounced exactly, was the god of the soil, i.e. the dust of the earth. Now Yahweh invades his territory, brings forth lice rather than rice, a wordplay that I'm making in English, which I'm sure would not work in Egypt. He's also regarded as the father of snakes, giving a deeper sense to Moses' staff, becoming a serpent and swallowing up the magician's serpent staffs. Fourth, we have swarms of flies. Uatchit, also called Wadjet, was the goddess of the marshes where papyrus and swarms abound. She's the goddess of the heat of noon, which empowers the swarms of flies, and was closely associated with the sun god Ra. She both wore and was the image of Pharaoh's crown, a protector of the land. And Yahweh blots out the sun with swarms and devastates the land over which the swarm goddess stood sentinel. Fifth, we have the death of livestock. The cow goddess, Hathor, like many Egyptian deities, has a complicated history. She was pictured as a cow or as a woman adorned with cow horns. Like other cow goddesses, Hathor is also associated with the sun and sky. and thus the symbolic mother of the Pharaoh's cows. She was revered as nurturer and givers of milk. Like other cow goddesses, Hathor is also associated with the sun and the sky, and thus became the symbolic mother of the pharaohs. Cows were revered as nurturers and givers of milk, and she is symbolically struck down with Yahweh's plague against the cattle on the land. Sixth, ashes turn to boils. Isis is the goddess who resurrected her brother, Osiris, had legendary magical powers, and is commonly associated with magic spells. Sixth plague, ashes turn to boils. Isis. Ashes turn to boils. So Isis, as the goddess who resurrected her brother Osiris, had legendary magical powers and is commonly associated with magic spells of healing for everyone, even common people. Here, even Pharaoh's magicians were unable to stand before Pharaoh because the boils were tormenting them. 7. Hail and fire from heaven. 7. Hail and fire from the heavens. Exodus 9:23 says, Moses stretched out his staff toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran down to the earth. As with the swarm goddess, when swarms destroy the frog-headed fertility goddess. As with the swarm goddess, when swarms destroy, and the frog-headed fertility goddess, when frogs overrun and pollute the land, Yahweh seizes control over the heavens and rains down lightning and lethal hail. There are a few different sky deities to play with here. Primarily, we have Tefnut, goddess of sky and moisture. We have Shu, god of winds and air. We have Horus, god of kingship and sky, the spirit of Pharaoh and life. And we have Nut, goddess of the sky, a nourisher, suckling the world. None can hold back Yahweh's hand. 8. Locusts. 8. Locusts plague from a strong east wind. Seth was the ruler of the Red Land, i.e. the east and west desert regions surrounding the black land of fertile Egypt. As the desert was a protective flank, Seth was thought to play his part in warding off chaos from Egypt. From Seth's desert, however, Yahweh brings locusts to finish off what remained from the hail. 9. Blocking out the sun. We're back to good old Ra. Ra, the noonday sun, ruler of sky, earth, and the underworld, and of kings. He was divine order and the source of creation. The Egyptians called themselves the cattle of Ra. Yahweh's penultimate strike was to blacken out all the light of day and night so that a painful darkness spread throughout the whole land. And finally, 10. The killing of the firstborn. Pharaoh was worshipped as the son of Ra, Horus on earth, Osiris in death. Not only does Yahweh strike down every firstborn from beast to man, from the lowest servant to the very house of Pharaoh, but here Pharaoh is defeated in his resistance to releasing the labor force of Israel to go their way. God said to Moses in Exodus 7:2-5. God said to Moses in Exodus 2:7-5. God said to Moses in Exodus 7:2-5, tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my hosts, my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring out the people of Israel from among them. Yahweh did, Egypt did, Pharaoh did, and Israel did. Yahweh did, Egypt did, Pharaoh did, Israel did.